like to call the City of Fraser Zoning Board of Appeals for April 4th to order. If you have any cell phones, would you please mute them or turn them off so they don't interrupt the proceedings? And if you would, join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Oh. Who's taking notes? Okay. Alicia, can we have a roll call for attendance, please?
Member Burley?
Here.
Member Schmente?
Here.
Chair Farina?
Yes.
Member Green?
Here.
Member Menendez?
Present.
And Member Stasek?
Present.
Okay. Next would be the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes that anybody wants to make on the agenda? Okay. I'll take a motion to approve the agenda. Go ahead, Mr. Brewer.
Make the motion to approve the agenda.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay. Motion by Joe Chimenti, seconded by Roseanne Menendez. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Next up is approval of the minutes for March 7th.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of March 7th, 2024 as submitted.
I'll second.
Any comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Did miss the thing. Petitioners and members of the audience, the Zoning Board of Appeals is herein created as a body of limited powers where there are practical difficulties or unnecessary hardships in the way of carrying out the strict letter of the Fraser Code. The board shall have the power to pass upon appeals to vary or modify any of the provisions of the code relating to the construction, structural changes in equipment, or alterations of buildings or structures so that the spirit of the code shall be observed, public safety secured, and substantial justice done. No variance in the provisions or requirements of the code shall be authorized by the board unless the board finds evidence that all of the following facts and conditions exist. A, that there is exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applying to the property in question as to the intended use of the property that do not apply generally to other properties in the same zoning district. B, that the variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of a substantial property right similar to that possessed by other properties in the same district and in the same vicinity. The possibility of increased financial return shall not in and of itself be deemed sufficient to warrant a variance. C, that the authorizing of such a variance shall not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property or will not materially impair the intent and the purpose of the Fraser Code or the public interest. And D, that the condition or situation of the specific piece of property or the intended use of the property for which the variance is sought is not of so general a nature or recurrent in nature as to make it reasonably practicable, and the formulation of general regulations for such a condition or situation. Having said that, we have new business of the board first. It is a public hearing on ZBA 24-02 variance request for Sunbelt Rentals. Is there anybody who wishes to be heard on Sunbelt Rentals? Okay, I'm opening the public hearing on Sunbelt Rentals. Anybody who wishes to be heard?
7:05.
At 7:05. I am closing it at 7:06. No one wishes to be heard. Sunbelt has asked that they have to notice because the property next door to them is not in their title as of yet. And so that is going to be renoticed for next month, and they'd like this all on the same thing, all at the same time. So I will take a motion to postpone.
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay. Can we have a roll call on that, please?
Chair, I'm sorry, Member Burley,
Yes.
Member Schmidty,
Yes.
Member Green,
Yes.
Member Menendez,
Yes.
Member Stasek,
Yes.
and Chair Farina.
Yes. Next up is variance 24-03, request. Whoops, sorry. Yeah, request for Foundation Solutions, 34-400 Klein Road. Can you read it for us, ma'am?
Thank you, Chair Farina. So this is it's a two-parter. It's a variance request for a modification of a previously approved variance to store loose gravel on the site. And it's also a request for a variance to increase the non-conforming front parking setback from 63 feet to 51 feet. This property is in the IR, Industrial Restricted Districts. And they are, I guess, there's a couple unique items on this. I think we'll note that if they are proposing two, per their site plan, if they're proposing two gravel storage areas, it would have to be, instead of a modification of the variance, it'd have to be a new variance, so we'd have to re-notice, and they'd have to reapply for that. Correct me if I misspoke on that.
I think it would, so my understanding is that when the applicant was here in 2022, there was only one, I guess, bay or one enclosure for gravel storage. Upon my office's review of the site plan, it looks like now there are two. And so and this is something the applicant can clarify tonight, but it looks like if that's the plan, then the amount of storage on site is more than what was initially proposed. So it would require an amendment to the original use variance that allowed gravel on site, because I believe the original approval was conditioned on certain screening, and then as well as, I believe, there could only be 10 yards of loose material on site. So if that is the plan, then that would require an amendment to the use variance. And that hasn't been noticed for tonight, so that would have to occur after public notice has been set out for that variance.
So you have to renotice for the additional.
If that's
that's the
their
intent,
intention, yeah, to move forward with that, yes.
So as a refresh, the original variance for loose gravel was ZBA 22-03 to allow outdoor storage of loose gravel with the condition that the enclosure and equipment be properly screened in a manner that's acceptable to the Planning Commission in review of the site plan approval. Additionally, that it be limited to 10 yards or less of loose material, and that the property owner provide a parking agreement approved by the city attorney and recorded by the city. And that is, the last one about the parking agreement is the item that the applicant is seeking to remove. So in reviewing if there's any exceptional or extraordinary circumstances that apply, so regarding the outdoor storage of loose gravel, we're not aware of any exceptional or extraordinary circumstances. But again, we note that it was previously granted in 2022. Regarding the front parking setback variance, again, we're not aware of any exceptional or extraordinary circumstance applying to the property in question. Although I guess it does back up against a Sweeney drain, which might be something that limits development, something to note. Regarding if the variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of substantial property right that's not possessed by properties in the same vicinity. So regarding the outdoor storage of loose gravel, again, we're not aware of any of a situation where other properties are storing loose materials. But it is it is true that several properties in Fraser appear to store loose materials in a manner that it's not consistent with the requirements. Again, noting that this was previously granted. In terms of the front parking setback, the applicant notes several properties in the vicinity of the subject site that have similar setbacks between 41 and 51 feet, and these are also zoned industrial restricted. Authorizing the variance will not be of substantial detriment of the adjacent property and will not materially impair the intent and purpose. So regarding the outdoor storage and the front parking setbacks, we do not believe that granting either variance will cause substantial detriment to adjacent property owners or cause detriment to the public interest. Authorizing such variances will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property. Specifically, the ZBA may consider light and visual impacts. Again, we don't find it likely that this would cause detriment in the form of light or visual impacts. And the gravel storage will need to be screened as well. Similarly, we do not anticipate the parking setback creating any visual or light impacts, negative impacts. Then regarding the conditions that are situation of the specific piece of property, that it will not create a general rule. In terms of gravel storage, the surrounding properties in the city of Fraser limits do not appear to have been granted similar rights as the applicant's requesting. By granting this variance, it's possible that similar businesses in the vicinity may request the same exceptions, but it's not likely these would become a general rule. But this case could be utilized as a precedent for future decisions. Regarding the outdoor loose gravel storage, I apologize, I believe that's meant to be the parking. The variance may be general, as evidenced by the existing non-conforming parking setback. And then F and G about phasing or planning commission sponsorship are not applicable. So we recommend that the modification to the previous variance be granted, but in regards to the setback, because they are meeting the parking requirements and we don't find practical difficulty, we would recommend denying that one.
Say that again.
What was it?
I didn't hear you.
On the whole thing, or just the last?
Just the last.
Just the last item. In terms of the front parking, we would recommend denying that one.
Alrighty. Are there any questions, Roseanne?
Yes, in terms of the parking, because there's, on these drawings, I can't see a specific number. How do we know what's adequate and what's not? Because it's not appearing, because before the applicant said they didn't have enough parking. And everything has been changed so much, and I understand certain things are going to be moved around. The green belt's not in, asphalt's going to come out. There's linings that, 3 cars can fit striped. You know what I'm saying? You can't tell by looking at it how many parking spots they have.
Yeah. The site plan indicates 14, although we will note that 3 currently appear to be being used as vehicle storage, like equipment. So if that's the case and that is where it's stored, I think they discussed this at Planning Commission yesterday, but we didn't discuss this. But if those 3 spots are being used for vehicle storage, then those do not count in the parking count and they would be deficient 3. But there are 14 currently. There are, looking at the site plan, there are 10 on the left side and 4 on the right.
But you couldn't use that for the vehicle parking because you can't have any outside parking, correct?
Not without an approved site plan and screening.
So that area, technically, if it did have approval, the larger ones where you could fit a truck and a trailer, that would have to be screened in.
They would have to either screen it and get it approved or move that storage inside.
The vehicle storage
Vehicle
inside.
storage, yes.
Okay, screen. And then if those were removed inside hypothetically, with all the approvals from building, from fire, et cetera, whoever has to weigh in on that, he would not be deficient any then?
No, he would have the required parking.
The required 14?
Yes.
But because of those 3 that are being used for the vehicles now that really aren't supposed to be there, he's deficient by 3.
Like, yes, technically, that's the current conditions.
Technically, right.
But according to the proposed plans, no. And I will note that the previous variance approval, his site plan also had 14, but the applicant indicated that he had a greater parking need than the minimum, and that is where that condition for parking agreement.
Shared
came
agreement,
into-
correct, I remember that.
Yep.
But they're asking to remove that now, correct?
They are asking to remove that, yes.
So that would tell me then we just have to make do with what's here, parking-wise,
That
which is the
would be-
14.
yeah.
We have to come up with 14.
That's my understanding.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for the planner? Okay. Sir, if you'd like to come up, introduce yourself again.
Joseph Marth with Foundation Solutions 360. I'm the owner of the company. So just to clarify one thing, I'll bring this up there with me like last night.
The other one's a,
This is the stored gravel that we're talking about. I know they put it on there, stored gravel, but this is like a loading, unloading. Sometimes we'll have pallets, sometimes we'll have debris there, and then the next day when the crews unload it all, we scrape it up and get rid of it. So it's not really gravel storage. This is the only place where I want to store loose, clean gravel, no more than 10 yards. The other area is, it could have gravel there for a day, it could have pallets there for a day. The guys just unload, and then the next morning we clean that up.
and that's what I saw on the site also. He's just storing gravel in that first bins, and there was crushed concrete there and pallets.
So that's just temporary till the next morning, then we clean it up. Now, as far as the parking goes, yesterday when I came here, the council member that was sitting right here had told me about the vehicles that are stored outside and how they need to be screened. And he had recommended like a fencing or some kind of screening to block all that. So I took a measurement today because I think one of the other stipulations was whatever the screening is has to be at least 4 to 8 feet tall, and it needs to be 100 feet from the road. Those were the 2 things that were part of that. And I would have to get another variance, I believe, for that. Are you familiar with it? She referenced it last night.
I think it's a
it was if you
variant.
couldn't get the 100 feet.
Yes.
So it's if, my colleague was here last night, but I spoke with her this morning. It's if you couldn't meet those conditions, then a variance would be required.
Okay.
But we haven't seen, we weren't sure, so.
Right. So I have to get some sort of screening to park those outside. Those vehicles and that gravel is detrimental to our operations. I took that measurement today, and it's exactly 92 feet from the road. It's not the 100 feet. And again, the hardship is 1/3 of the property with the Swaney drain behind us. I only have 56 more feet of operational area, minus the 92 for the front parking. So I looked into it, his suggestions, and I had found, and I had called, and I'm going to get quotes, a fence that has screening, 95% screening, and the fence would be a cantilever retractable like this. And if I did something like that, would that suffice for blocking the stored gravel as well? Because at this point, you wouldn't see anything. All you would see is the parking lot, the screening, and the building. Everything would be, the dumpsters, the gravel, everything would be screened at that point. And I didn't even think about that until the council member brought it up yesterday, and I looked back and it was a great idea. So how would that suffice? And
This is not the planning commission.
no, I know. I would like to move forward with doing the screening for the whole front area.
You can discuss it with them, and if they say it's good, then I assume they'll recommend it to the planning commission.
Okay.
we're here about the variance that you want.
Okay. So
But
we'll just stick to this, and then I guess after this meeting, I'll propose that plan
you'll have.
to the city and then come back next month. Okay. So then the two variances, the city planner already went over as far as storing the gravel, no more than 10 yards. The plans have a closure for front gates. They have a cover for them as well that are on the plans that weren't on the plans last time. That was one thing. And then the new variance that's requested is the setback being 51 feet instead of 63 feet. And again, that's just because if I had the room behind the building, I would add a ton more parking, and I don't.
And the reason you don't is the Sweeney Drain
Correct.
takes up,
1/3.
yes, sir.
I didn't get a chance to get this copy because I have this one that was here, but it doesn't have the measurements for the setback. What is that setback measurement to the current
The current one right now
proposal where you
is
have it on-
65 feet.
So from there to where? Is how far?
This is 65 feet from the center of the road.
Okay. And what do you have right now?
Right now, it's to the approach. It's temporary asphalt.
So right now, what is it at that you have on the property right now?
I don't have that measurement. I just know that asphalt and dirt has to come out, and it has to be put back to grass and the trees.
Okay, because when I went out there today, I mean, how many parking spots do you think you need?
I'd like a lot more, but I need at least the 14 to 16 parking spots would be great.
Because when I went out there today, you had 19 vehicles, and they were all butt up against each other on would be the north side, and you could tell that whoever was parking the first one went onto the property and crossed in between their property and your property to get to that point. So if there was a fence there, I don't know what you'd do because you have two cars double parked that whole north side.
The fence I'm proposing would be across this way. It would completely block all this off.
Right. But my issue is there was 19 cars there today.
We're not supposed to have that many parked there.
And I didn't even see enough parking today. You had one spot that was open, and that whole north side was double parked 4 or 5 deep,
And normally the guys carpool. We're not supposed to have that many cars there.
okay? So I don't see how it's temporary right now, and you still don't have the ample parking.
Like I said, the guys are supposed to carpool. There wasn't supposed to be that many cars there today.
And another question, is Mr. Cabman still with your company?
Yes, he was here last night.
Okay, yeah, when he was here, his whole spew, whatever you want to call it, was so that you could put an approach on the other side to get the approval from planning to get that. Why didn't you do that back then?
On the south side of the building?
Yes. When we were here in 2022, you were asking for a variance, okay, for the gravel and everything, and the whole point of that was to move that outside the building so you could expand and go get the approval from planning to put the drive on the other side. So I'm asking you, 15 months later, why isn't it done?
I don't have a good answer for you. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Any other questions? No? Joseph?
Is the property illuminated at night?
We have a light on the front of the building, the north side, that illuminates to the parking lot area.
And it sheds enough light?
I think so.
And when you propose this fence, are you going to improve the lighting, or?
We can do that over the area on the back side of the fence. Yes. That'd probably be a good idea because the fence would block that light from going into that area.
Now, you said that you want to use the south side for parking also, right?
4 parking spots. But then we have that loading area that I have to put the measurements on and get that redone.
Member Menendez.
I guess to the planners, he was referencing 4 to 8 foot screening fence. I mean, a 4-foot fence is never going to cover at least what I saw, box truck, backhoe, even pickup trucks, commercial ones.
The zoning ordinance requires it's a chain link fence or masonry wall that's not less than 4 feet high nor more than 8 feet high. And it states that the height and choice of fence or wall and the requirements shall be determined by the planning commission.
Okay.
So I think if that were to be added on a site plan, that could be done as part of the site plan
Site plan review.
approval.
Okay, right.
It wouldn't be 4 feet, it would be much taller.
When do you plan on starting work if we grant this?
As soon as it's approved. So from here, I'm gonna get these plans changed, resubmit them to planning, and then be here next month. As soon as it gets approved, I would say I would get started within the next 30 days.
How did the asphalt get out there?
That was laid by us.
Why did you lay it when it isn't in compliance with the plan that you were approved for?
At the time, we had stone that was out there, and the stone, with any of the water, it was making mud. So I just put it down temporarily until we can get this process done. I mean, we have all the equipment to put that down, take it out, and replant everything the way that the city wants it. So it's just temporary. As it's not concrete, it's just asphalt.
Back in October 6th of '22, and the other variance that was requested, I asked this question, and I would like to know again if there's any chemicals on the site.
Only chemicals would be like gasoline or diesel in a can that's in a storage container inside.
Yellow storage container?
When we got our certificate of occupancy, they went through all that and told us what we needed.
I just want to make sure we're back in line.
Yes.
Anybody else? Any questions? Member Menendez.
Just a comment, my concern is that this variance has been here since October 6th of 2022, and nothing moved, just in the couple areas that were before zoning. And then concrete was asphalt was put down without any permits, without any engineered drainage. The proper procedures were kind of bypassed. That concerns me. I know back to in '22, there was talk of the poles, the wood poles that had lighting on those. Those were supposed to be removed. Those were still there. So I have
I'm not familiar with
concerns about things being adhered to when.
wood poles.
They're on the back of the north wall, behind they're just wood posts with lights on them.
I'm not familiar with that.
Back in '22, about the lighting being removed, or?
I'm not familiar with that at
It was
all.
my understanding there were no permits for that.
I don't know anything about wood poles or lights in the back of the building.
Not in back of the building, on the north side.
On the north side. Poles?
There were 3 wood posts with lights on them. And it was my understanding that there were no permits for the electrical for that. So I have concerns that things are being done and they're going around the process.
I understand the frustration and how things didn't take the proper channels, and that's why I'm taking care of this now, so that I'm up to speed with everything that needs to happen, and it gets done right and one last time. Because I wasn't the only person working on this in the beginning, or knew about everything, but I do now, and there's no excuse.
You have anything else to offer?
I'm sorry, sir?
You have anything else to offer?
No, I do not, sir.
Okay. All right. I'll entertain a motion. Yes, sir. Mr. Burley.
I got a question. If our original variance was conditional on the screening and the conditions, does that, since it wasn't done, does that make that variance null and void?
It does not. The zoning ordinance is very specific on when a variance expires. So a variance will expire in 1 year if the use isn't used, but the ordinance will deem it as used if the applicant has applied for site plan approval. So he did apply for site plan approval after the variance was obtained. And that's coming directly from the plain wording of the zoning ordinance. So the variance is still in effect.
So they did prior to 10/6/23?
22.
Yeah, they came back to the following planning commission meeting,
Like a month after.
which,
A month after the ZBA?
Yes.
for final site plan approval.
Okay, and so there's no expiration on the site plan approval?
There is on the site plan, so that's why they were before the planning commission last night, because the language in the zoning ordinance as it pertains to site plan approval is that that will expire within a year if progress isn't, if the work isn't completed within that time frame. But
Wouldn't that be the expired then, if it was if it was approved October of '22, and they came in November of '22 to renew it or to apply for a new site plan, right? So, and then a year after that would be '23.
So that's why their site plan has expired, but the variance is not, the zoning ordinance is silent as to the expiration date of the variance, except for if the applicant has applied for, there's several, if it's a building permit, it can be site plan approval, it can be special approval land use, it doesn't have to be all of those, it can only be one. And the ordinance also doesn't require that they even obtain site plan approval, just that it's applied for. I was also, I thought
Okay, I
differently as
understand.
well. I will be totally honest with you. But that is what the plain language of the zoning ordinance is.
Then I have a question for you. What do we have to do with the original variance?
So, in terms of,
How do we vacate that variance?
what do you mean by vacate that variance?
Expunge it. How do we expunge that variance?
So, the variance can't necessarily be expunged, it can be amended. So, I know one of the items up that's, the board can decide tonight is he's asking for an amendment to the condition regarding the parking agreement. That can be modified.
Okay.
I would also, just before the public hearing is opened and a motion is made, I wanted to just clarify one thing. So it sounds like those 3 parking spots that are towards the rear of the property, that those are going to be used for outdoor storage. So I think Lauren said this earlier, but I just want to reiterate it. So those would not count towards the property's parking count if they're being used for storage. So if that's the case, then. Oh, there's 2? Okay.
2 would be used.
Okay, so then the site would be deficient by 2 spots, so that would require a variance for, unless the site plan is amended to compensate for those other 2 spots.
Now, last night you said you were going to store those vehicles inside.
If I can't get a variance to get the, what's the term we're using here, the screening, then I would have to figure out another way to do it. But then somebody was saying something about the fire marshal not wanting equipment inside the building, and I didn't know what to do then.
Gasoline inside a building is, but if we can't, you won't have enough parking. I mean,
If it went back to 51 feet, that would compensate for the 2 that I'm losing.
Mr. Burley.
Well, my issue is the parking, because like I said, there was 19 vehicles there. Why didn't you, if you're looking for a variance on the front side, the north side of the building, why wouldn't you add some, because you're using the 3 or 4 on the south side, to add at least 2 more?
I'm sorry, what's your question? Is it about the south side?
It would be the south side, you're asking for a variance on the front side, on the north side, correct? Okay, well, all parking, but you have it on the north side. Why wouldn't you do it on the south side too, and it might help for more parking too? You're, right now, you have 1, 2, 3, 4 spots south of whatever that landing area X is, okay? Adding a couple more spots to the setback of 51. I mean, I don't know how many you could get in there.
Right.
But
No,
that
I mean,
might
that's
help.
a good idea. That's why I come here, because there's a lot of good ideas that get thrown at me. But, I mean, we could add a couple more over there too, yeah.
Okay, any other questions?
Yes, one more. So why do you want to get rid of the parking agreement?
Because we don't need to park over at my neighbors anymore.
But you do. I mean, like I said, there's double parked, you know. In my opinion, when I go there and I see it jam-packed, you don't have adequate parking, you know. I understand that, you know, you're from that tree on the north side over, you could put 2 cars there, and that's what you did. You put long lines there to put that in there, but that's not really adequate parking, is when you're double parking.
Correct. And they're supposed to carpool. That wasn't supposed to be like
Right.
that.
So in my opinion, I have a hard time giving you a variance for, you know, parking, or the spots, and the, you know, that you want more spots when you don't have it adequate now, in my opinion.
Well, if I add 2 more down there, and then like your advice said, add more over here, I don't need to rely on my neighbor. Because what happens if my neighbor sells his building? He's looking for someone to buy it.
Then you buy it.
I wish I had $2 million.
Well, last time, what's his name was here, he said, you know, if you added all these from 7 to 10, or I can't remember what the exact numbers of crews are, you're doing well.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just saying that, you know, there's always an option or a bigger area,
Right.
you know.
I'm limited with the building that I bought. I understand that, right? I mean, that's my problem. That's my concerns. But there's not as much parking as we did 2 years ago, because the economy is not helping that well. So I'm just trying to control with the employees I have, and there wasn't supposed to be that much parking, right? They're supposed to carpool. So I don't know why that happened today, because I know you guys are driving around. That's what you're supposed to do before you come to these meetings. So, I mean, I would have said, hey, everybody stay home today or something, but that's not what I was doing. They weren't supposed to do that. So,
Member Menendez?
To whoever can answer this one, so on the, I mean, as he stands right now, he's 3 short, right? And he has a potential to go in for another variance to put in a second storage bin for gravel? Am I correct?
I believe he's indicating he would be 2 short. Well, he's not, his site plans don't indicate any shortage, but if he stored 2 and took up 2 spaces, he would be 2 short.
Well, he just said he plans on doing the outside storage with the vehicle.
So so then he would be 2 short right of that. If he wanted to put parking on the south side, we would need a variance request for that, I believe, in a different one, or is it encompassed in this one?
If it falls within the same setback.
Then it could be encompassed within. Okay.
And then there was talk about additional storage bin for gravel?
No.
I believe he indicated he's not using it for the second bay for storage, so then that, it wouldn't need a new variance request. The existing one.
And my concern also with the variance on the parking is you know, you said your people are supposed to carpool, they didn't, so there's more vehicle. The unfortunate part of it is that a variance stays with the land, so if you just leave, that's all the parking spots they have. You know, they may not carpool, they may have cars backed up, trucks backed up, and then in the same position again.
If they
Not enough
leave,
parking.
I'm sorry.
The variance stays with the land. So let's say you end up selling your business and it worked for you because y'all carpooled. That might not be the case if another business comes in because the variance stays with the land.
If we left, there'd be 3 more spots because there would be no outdoor storage for vehicles at all either. And 14 is what was required for the size of my property. So if another company came in, that's still the amount that is required for that size of the building.
I still see it the way Mr. Burley does, that it's,
I'm failing to follow as far as,
the way the parking is now is not sufficient.
Member Green? Is that you? Nope. Who's that? Joseph?
On this drawing here, the proposal, the owner took a survey on the main neighbors you have on setbacks and everything. And the one you want to request, the trailers, and if you got, the trailer, any trailer is not going to go there, right? Or anything like that, right?
all right, on the plans you said?
Yeah,
Where are we looking now?
fine. The 51 feet requesting
51 feet is from the center line of the road.
on that spot. You want to,
No, it would just be regular parking. No trailers, no trucks or anything like that. That would all be
there's not going
behind
to be
the,
anything, any trailer, any enclosed trailer, it's just going to be parked.
heavy pickup, Equinox, a regular car.
Okay.
No equipment forward of where we want to propose to do screening, which I'll bring next month. I don't have that on here.
Okay.
Any other questions? Anybody? All right. Well, we have to take an action. So I will propose,
Mr. Chair, before, we need to open the public hearing.
I'm sorry. And that was the action we need to take. Thank you. It's 7:45, and open the public hearing on ZBA request 24-03, Foundation Solutions, 360, location at 34-400 Klein Road. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to be heard on this item? Anybody from the public? No one wishes to be heard, so I'm closing the public hearing. I'll bring it back up to the board. Let me just, give me a second. Okay. I move on request 2403, variance request for 34-400 Klein, to obtain a variance from the ordinance standards to increase the existing non-conforming front parking setback from 63 to 51 feet in the IR district. And do we want to handle this together or separately?
It's up to you, Mr. Chair.
Let's handle that one first then. Is there a second to that motion? Early.
Can I possibly add to the motion?
You can modify it?
Or modify it. For that, I have my issue is the parking. So I would like to see an additional at least 2 parking, if you could get it into, and I can figure out how to say it, on each side of that south driveway. Because my whole issue is your parking.
So increase the south side as well?
At least 2 parking spots. I mean, if you could get, I'd love to have 2 on the south and 1 on the north of the drive, if that's all possible.
Can I, if I got approved to the 51 feet,
Correct.
could I
Yes.
take this down to that as well? Maybe add 2, maybe 3 more?
Add 2 probably there, and maybe 1 on the other side.
Over here?
Would be north of the tree, yes. I mean, the 2 if possible, because I just,
I think I can get 3 here, but I think it wouldn't look good sit in front of the building in just one spot. That's just my opinion. I agree with you over here to add more. I have the room, I can do that. But just to have one spot poking out.
I just don't think you can get 3 there. By your picture on the other side, as if it's per scale, you could probably get 2.
2 and then 3. If I got the 51 feet, I could do 3. If I didn't, it would only be 2.
Is that at
This is
51?
65.
Okay.
There's 2.
Okay, I see.
I think I can get 3 more if I got that.
Well, if you get 51, you could add on the front an extra 2 also.
It would only account for about 1 more over here and here.
Right, 1 each.
Yes.
Any discussion on that?
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, ma'am.
So if, and this, I'll leave this up to the board and the applicant, but just my recommendation, if the recommendation is to increase what the applicant has now, as presented on the site plan, I would recommend that the applicant come back with those on the plans. I know we can probably look at it now and say it would fit within certain setbacks, but I don't want the board to make a decision that would ultimately require another variance to have to be triggered, if it includes the setbacks.
He has to come back anyways for the screening, correct?
Planning.
Well, not necessarily. It depends on what he proposes. It sounds like, though, if he does because it's too close to the road, then that would require a variance. So if that's what, the board wants to do tonight, I would at least recommend then amending this site plan before the board decides on adding additional parking there, or approving that.
So we postponing any action on this. He goes back to planning with the new proposal.
So our recommendation would be to, and my understanding is last night at Planning Commission, they postponed the Planning Commission, the item at planning, until all of the variances necessary were approved or denied by the Zoning Board of Appeals, because depending on what the Zoning Board of Appeals will grant, that will ultimately change the site plan that he needs site plan approval for.
I'm sorry, this is so messed up.
So
So
do we want to postpone? Is that what?
Well, I'm going to withdraw my second.
And on advice of counsel, I'm going to withdraw the motion. And I'm going to move to postpone this item till our next meeting, and where we can look at what has been proposed to you and how you want to change that. And we'll take it up at that point in time.
okay, I'll get the plans revised and I'll get the screening put on them as well.
Okay? Now, second portion of this was
Well, I'll second you. Because did you make a motion to postpone?
Yes.
I'll
Thank you.
second.
All right, is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing none, Alicia, can you call the roll?
Member Burley?
Postpone. Or yes, sorry.
Member Chimenti?
Postpone.
Member Green?
Postpone.
Member Menendez?
Yes.
Member Stasek?
Yes.
Chair Farina?
I agree. All right,
Sorry.
Chair Farina,
yes.
I just want to note to the applicant that if you are requesting a variance for the fence, we'll need that application by Monday, the 8th, in order to notice it for the newspaper in time. If it's within, yeah, if it's within the 100 feet setback. Also, I know you said you measured it. I just want to specify that it's to the center line of the road, so not the edge. It's to the center line. So that might give you some extra room.
Really, want you to be successful, but you got a tough piece of property there.
And because this has gone on for so long, so I'm gonna try to make this right, make it right for you guys, okay?
You may want to talk to your people and say, hey, go to a shopping center and meet and bring one car.
Duly noted.
Thank you.
Buy smaller ones.
Okay. It's going to be an easy night.
Mark, what time was you there today? Mark, what time did you drove by there?
9 this morning?
I was there at 1 o'clock and I found the same thing you did.
Yeah.
We were there later.
I've driven before many a times, and it's always busy.
Old business. Item number 24-01, variance request. Variance request. I thought this was a use variance.
It is.
Yes.
Oh, okay. All right, for Trevor Tuller at 16659 Sweet Beef, 14 Mile Road. Okay. Yes, sir.
Oh, I have personal interest in this matter, so I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion.
Okay. You're going to withdraw.
Yep, I will withdraw.
Thank you. Appreciate your honesty in this. Lauren, are you up, or is Alicia up?
Yeah, I'll go through this quickly since this was postponed from last meeting. The applicant, Trevor Toller, is proposing a powder coating business in the community business district, which is not a permitted use. The applicant's requesting the use of the accessory building situated behind Schatz Market at 16659 East 14 Mile, Suite B. And since this is a use variance, we'll note that all 5 members are needed to approve it. We'll also note the applicant submitted some supplemental information as well that was included in your packet regarding the nature of the use. And I'm sure the applicant can provide more detail on that. We did want to note within the supplemental information, the applicant noted using it mainly for storage. If that's the case, then he will need a different use, he'd need a different, that's not the variance that's being requested, and I believe, Ms. Talmadge, if you wanted to elaborate.
Sure, so, and that's something that can be elaborated on. However, if the building is proposed for another use, that would require a different analysis. So if the primary use is storage, that would be a totally different use variance than what has been requested now. So I think maybe some clarification on that.
So even though it was originally a storage buildings are allowed as ancillary uses to the primary use. So as a primary use, then that falls into, again, another classification of industrial restricted uses of storage, warehousing, things of that nature. So in going through, would you like me to go through the review again, Chair Farino?
Yes, because she wasn't here.
Fair point. All right, so regarding the first criteria, that there are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances, the applicant has indicated the building's design is meant for an industrial use. It has 2 front doors, no windows, showrooms or places of general customer-facing business, and that it was built on Schatz Market and umbrellaed under the same zoning. We do note that the parcel is pretty irregular, and the building's not typical, although the intended use when it was constructed was as that storage building, not as its own building. So regarding that the variance is necessary for the preservation and enjoyment of substantial property right, the applicant stated that the building will not be used. If the building's not used as an industrial use, it will remain vacant, and that such variance would prevent the building from remaining vacant and contribute to business. Again, we note that while it's sat vacant, allegedly, that the building is an accessory building and not originally intended to be leased. In terms of authorizing such variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property owners and will not materially impair the intent and purpose of this chapter. The applicant has indicated that the use of the building will not generate excessive noise or smell, and that the process is non-hazardous and safe. Planning does have concerns about residential buildings along the rear lot line of the parcel and the potential for nuisance. Also, we'll note the building official provided comments, also concerned about the residential nearby, and also were concerns about hours of operation, work being done outside the building, material storage, as well as potential for noise and odor concern. And then public safety also noted that the International Fire Code may require fireproofing based on the type of oven. The applicant previously indicated that these ovens do not run hot enough to trigger any of that fireproofing, though. And then the conditions or situation are specific to the piece of property. So we do feel that this would be specific to this property, as there's no other buildings in this district that are quite like this building. So we do not believe a general rule would be created. And then regarding the final conditions, Planning Commission did not sponsor it, and there are no phasing plans, so those do not apply. So we're still concerned about an industrial type use being that close to residential, and the variance, of course, running with the land and the potential for other powder coating businesses at that location. So planning does recommend denying.
Mr. Burley.
Is there a percentage for ancillary use? For example, is there a guide, anything like that? If he was using it 90% for storage and 10% for something else, how would you define a minimal use of something?
I do not believe the ordinance specifically has like a percentage. I would say over 50%.
So you'd say more?
More than half.
Okay.
But correct me if I'm wrong.
No, that's my understanding. I don't think that the ordinance specifically says like a certain number. But I think what is important about that is that the storage is allowed as an ancillary building, use in an ancillary building, if there's a principal I think it's a retail store, which makes sense why this is in the parking lot of Schatz Market, because it was initially intended, my understanding is to be an ancillary storage building to that primary use.
So it can't be, so I guess what I was asking is, so the building has to be ancillary to something else. It couldn't be that the use of the building is majority for something and used for a little bit of something else.
I mean, it could, but I think the point that Lauren was making with that is that's where storage is only allowed in that district if it's ancillary to, if it's an ancillary building to a principal use.
So it's only allowed for storage because it's part of the other one?
Correct,
Gotcha.
yes.
Thank you.
Sorry if that was confusing.
No, that's, I'm just trying to understand. Okay.
Ladies first. Member Menendez.
Essentially like Schatz had it. Schatz built it, and they used it for storage for the products, goods, or whatever that they sold inside Schatz.
I don't know the exact history, but that's my
Right.
understanding.
Yeah, that is what they did, and then they didn't, and then something else was there, and then it wasn't, and then now we have this business going into the building that is an accessory building, an IR next to adjacent, literally in the backyard of residential. And again, the variance stays with the land, number one. And I'm yet to be able to find a hardship or practical difficulty with that, because the intended purpose of that was for accessory, not to run a business. Thank you.
Member Chimenti.
Is there anything on Michigan Environmental for adequate ventilation on the building for this purpose?
I do think there is contained within the fire code. And I think that might be noted in your report, Lauren. But I know there's certain requirements in the fire code regarding, I think it's like a booth that it must be done in and things like that.
In vacuums, you would have to have adequate for air, particles and moving around and stuff like that. Okay.
Well, I'd like to note that it is not in line with the master plan either. That the master plan designates that as central business district. And for me, that's a tough one. The Planning Commission spent a year reviewing it and setting up what the master plan should be. So that's tough. But are there any other questions for the administration? Anybody? Okay. You're up, sir.
All
Trevor?
right. So I do have a few things that I would like to clarify on. The designation of like the main use of like versus like,
Excuse me, can I stop you? Identify yourself for the record.
sorry, yes, hi, Trevor Toller, owner of Fraser Coatings. The main designation in this, and this like, especially like the supplemental thing I provided in, was to just try and answer a few more of the questions on what we're doing. But the main like core of this all is on the hardship use variance, and the fact that this building itself has existed there for going on 2 decades at that point. It's not a new building. It's not something that's just been sprung up to exist. This is a established building that has been in the community for a long time, and whether it's, going to remain vacant or somebody else is going to end up in it doing something that they shouldn't be, at the end of the day, I just personally don't believe in the whole ask for forgiveness rather than permission thing. Because at the very core of this all, what I've come to realize over the last couple of months of digging into this is I may even be just like way overkill of what I'm asking for and what I'm kind of describing as what we do. Because quite frankly, this is a spot for me to have some of my cars and bikes that I store and hang out with. And then also to do some powder coating on the side and like basically have this like artisan style of manufacturing. So it's not a, the whole gearing of this wasn't supposed to be like a crazy industrial type business, and this isn't a, firm that is getting, 10,000 brackets from Ford and we're making them all black. Like, we're doing very small run stuff, changing like the patio furniture, getting that powder coated so it can withstand the elements as well as any color you can think of. Or like just other small components in general where the whole point of this isn't a big venture. And what I've actually done research on and figured out is what we're trying to do here, and I guess what I'm trying to explain to you guys, is absolutely in the master plan. Because the master plan does have a designation about, again, I know it's unfortunately realizing when I was doing this, the whole Fraser Tomorrow section of the master plan was just aspirational. It is not codified by any means. But it lists off the CBD as wanting to have like residences, retail, as well as maker spaces. And an artisan maker space is not something that Fraser has codified or identified as, but other municipalities have. And basically what we're doing here is in that maker space thing. We're doing the customization, the more artistic side of things, the actual like changing of something into a like more custom good rather than a full-blown industrial operating powder coating business. But again, just for the clarity on all of that, the main purpose is this use variance for hardship, because truly there's not much else this building can be. And at the end of the day, it's been there a long time and it hasn't been used for storage for a long time. I believe the property's also changed hands back and forth, so it's not even like the same, continuance, so to speak, at this point. So realistically, with what we're offering and the type of idea of what we're trying to do, we're trying to keep it as far away as possible from industrial, because that's just not what we're looking to do. And again, with the whole asking for permission rather than forgiveness thing, this is something that we're working on a couple of hours, a night at the most, and then on the weekends sometimes. It's aspirational to want to grow this into something big, and 5 years from now, I'd love to, but the space that we need for what we want to do is small right now. And to even make this a reality of like a full-fledged thing, I would have to get something bigger. So I physically could not upscale more than just like the straight, almost hobby aspect of my business. I'm just trying to check all the boxes, make sure I'm doing the right things, make sure the city knows what I'm doing and they're okay with it, make sure that I'm doing the right things and that, I can continue to help not just grow the city and do the things, but like the whole point of the master plan was also to promote like a live-work atmosphere, which is also why I want to be in Fraser doing this. I did have my realtor continue to look after the last meeting. I basically called him up and I was like, hey, we need to see if there's anything else out there at all, period, because A, I wanted to make sure that I didn't leave any stone unturned, and B, there is nothing. There's nothing else in Fraser in the size I'm looking for, in the type of area that we need to do this. There's nothing. We're talking stuff that is 2, 3, 4, 5 times the size of what I could ever use, maybe even up to 10 times the size, and costs in the $8, $10, $12, $15,000 range. Which again, this is just a very small operation. We are just started, so that's kind of the comparables of it all, and the whole thing does hinge on that hardship because of the building not really existing as anything else, and at least we can kind of give you guys some oversight into what we're doing and keeping it good.
Member Burley.
The problem I have is you said that you were going to use it a couple hours a night, okay? So let's say we grant you this use, and then all of a sudden you're done in a year, okay? Now this use goes with the building, so somebody else can go in there and start power coating. And maybe they're not doing it, maybe they're doing it full-time, maybe they're, so that is one of the problems that I have is because of that. And you said the hardship, it's not the hardship of the building, it's the hardship of the land, I believe, correct? So it doesn't matter what the building is, it's about the land and how that is a hardship. So it would be nice to use the building as proposed, but we have to go by the land and not a building.
Okay. I would also introduce, like, if we can add it into the variance, that a condition of it would be for it to follow only my business, and that when my business vacates the property, it is no longer applicable. If that is a possibility, that is something that I'm, you know, absolutely open to and doesn't matter to me. I plan to be there, I hope to be there longer than a year. I'd like to continue to do my thing there, and I like the spot, but that is something that I am open to and we could put in.
Member Chimenti.
Are you leasing the property?
Yes.
So you got a year lease?
We do, however, it is conditional on the certificate of occupancy. I explained this kind of last time, but this is like my first dabble into government, zoning, starting a business, doing all this stuff. And unfortunately, it was a lot of conflicting and misinformation for about 6 straight weeks of me trying to figure out the right way to go about this and how to submit it and what to do. I wasted a lot of money and time before I started to realize the way that this goes and how this actually is going to work. The good news is the property owner is willing to work with me on this, and if it doesn't work out, I'll either pivot or just walk away. But rather not.
Any other questions? I have a question for the attorney. What he said about, is that realistic at all?
It is. We do that. That is a standard condition that we have utilized in other municipalities for certain projects. So it is possible to condition a variance solely on the applicant that is before you.
And does that set precedent, legal precedent for the next guy?
No.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Hearing no other questions, I'll open the public hearing. Is there anybody else in the public that wants to be heard? This is item 24-01, request of Trevor Tuller for location 16659 Suite B, 14 Mile Road. Anybody in the public that wishes to be heard? It's 8:14. I am opening the public hearing. It's 8:14 and 20 seconds, and I'm closing the public hearing because no one wants to be heard. Okay? All right. You know that we do not have a full board, okay? The 6th person is out. That will require everybody up here to vote in favor of this. You can, I'm going to give you the option to withdraw until we get another person on the board, which would, okay?
It's either going to work or it's not.
Okay.
I don't think that's something that's going to matter.
Okay. All right. Anybody want to make a motion? Anybody? Counselor? How would I form the motion to make it specific to his?
Just give me 1 second. I have some draft language here. So I would recommend language, something like, the variance shall be tied directly to the applicant. Any change of ownership or operation of the business or space shall cause the variance to be rescinded. And if you want to make the motion and then you'd want me to read that and then you add that, I can do that as well.
Okay, just to move us forward now. Unless anybody wants to make the motion. I lost my piece of paper. No, thank you. On Appeal 24-01, variance request for the City of Fraser, Fraser Coatings Limited Liability Corporation to obtain a use variance from the from zoning ordinance standards to allow a storage and powder coating business which is allowed in the industrial restricted area in the Community Business District, CBD.
Mr. Chair, I note that your motion indicated a storage and powder coating business, but this is only noticed for a use variance for a powder coating business.
Okay.
So if the approval would have to be only for that.
I modify my motion to just for the
Do you
powder
want,
coating business.
you want me to read that language?
Yes, I do.
Okay. The variance shall be tied directly to the applicant. Any change of ownership or operation of the business or space shall cause the variance to be rescinded by operation of law.
Okay, is there a second to that motion?
I second.
Any discussion on that motion?
My,
Go ahead.
my opinion is still the same, that I don't think it meets the standards set forth in 32-228A through D, as well as I can't find a hardship or practical difficulty. And again, it's not like it was a business that you need to repurpose. It was an accessory building.
Okay.
And so therefore, I am opposed to approving.
Member Burley, you want to say something?
Question, you also said you were gonna store stuff there.
Yeah, just personal effects. I've got a couple cars, motorcycles, stuff like that.
Indoors?
No, I've got a fenced-in back lot.
So it's more out, you're not gonna be storing anything in the building, other than the powder coatings?
Other than like, well, like parts for
Right,
things.
right,
but
okay,
no.
okay.
All right. Alicia, would you call the roll?
Member Burley?
Yes.
Member Schmidt?
Yes.
Member Green? Member Menendez?
Opposed.
Member Stasek?
Yes.
Chair Farina?
Opposed? Sorry.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah, it was. Okay,
Frank?
yes.
I got a question for the attorney here. So this is the first time that ever happened that there was a motion made by somebody, but they declined. I didn't know that was acceptable. I thought you would oppose or deny it. So you could do either or? Okay.
What I've always been told is you have to make a motion in the affirmative, no matter how you're going to vote. You don't make a
No,
negative.
we did.
You can make a motion to deny.
I don't know, your boss told me it should always be in the affirmative, so
Okay.
that's where I go by. Okay.
Good to know.
Unfinished business of the board, there is none? Monthly report, can you go over that, please?
Yep, so Hockeyland did get modification of the special land use for their drive-through at the last, the March Planning Commission meeting. I believe they are outstanding a few engineering items. Any corrections, Ms. Tomich? No. So they're close, very, very close. The strip mall at 32660 Utica Road. If you've driven past, I believe you can see construction on it. They're working on the demolition construction. Regarding sheets, so the city attorneys are in possession of a draft conditional rezoning agreement. No date has been set. I believe the applicant was targeting tentatively April or May. However, the conditional rezoning agreement has to be to the satisfaction of our city attorneys. So however long that back and forth takes will impact when that comes back to city council. And then the only other items are either items we saw today or the site plan was seen at Planning Commission last night for 3440 Klein, and they postponed it until variance, or until the ZBA made action on the applicant's variance requests. And I believe that is all.
Thank you. The lot on Utica Road that sits across from, right next to the Dairy Queen and the diner on Utica, on the east side, the vacant lot that was cleared.
Oh.
Yes.
Yes.
Has anything come across on that?
Anything?
Application for building permit? There was a big hole that they got cited for?
Right next
Near
to
Meyer.
the classic Coney Island.
Right.
I don't believe there has been anything.
I don't, no, I don't recall. That's not ringing a bell, so I would say no.
Okay, somebody asked me today about it.
Oh, yes. A car wash is interested. Sorry. Jogged my memory. There's a car wash.
No wonder why you
asked,
forgot.
I asked them, is there anything else it can be besides a car wash? They said, no, we are set on a car wash.
What district is that?
I'd have to double check. It's either CG or CN. I'd have to double check. I'm just double checking on it. There hasn't been an application. It was more of an inquiry.
Inquiry.
CG. Yeah, it is.
CG.
So,
Is a car wash an automatic permitted use in that CG?
I'll double check that as well.
Here we go.
Yeah, but we'll double check.
Yes.
Yep,
Completely enclosed.
C.
Land use, yeah.
No variance, nothing, right? Okay.
It's enclosed.
Right.
Okay. Alrighty. Planning Commission liaison, that's me. The only item on the Planning Commission last night was 34-400 Klein, and that got postponed until they came and saw us. And we were supposed to dive into the sign ordinance, but it got postponed because Lauren had a personal issue. And we'll do that next month. We're coming to the end of this discussion on the sign ordinance. So if you want any input there, you should come to the next Planning Commission meeting to give your input. So, having said that, any questions about Planning Commission? Okay, is there any public to be heard? I don't see any public to be heard, so I'm going to close the public hearing. And, yes, ma'am.
On our packets, I see that they print them double-sided. Is there any way they can do it like single where we don't have double-sided? Because there may be information that I want to put condensed just for one variance, right? And maybe I'm going to take the monthly planning and zoning and I want to file them separate when I have to reference back, and you can't because it's stuck to part of somebody's application.
Yeah.
That was a problem that I was running into because, you know, you get it and the papers get mixed up and then you're trying to figure out what goes with, and it's more for researching backwards. You know what I mean? It makes it more difficult because then you have to leave everything thrown together when you have to go back instead of being able to go to your, you know, monthly plan reports and just pull them all up and everything's listed there, or a particular variance and just pull the packet and everything's there with nothing else in it. If it wouldn't create too much of a hardship.
Not unnecessary, no. So we can do that.
I would appreciate that. Thank you so much.
And I would really appreciate prints that we could read.
Noted.
Okay, Joseph, do you have anything you'd like to say?
Yes. April 21st, between 3 and 7 o'clock at John F. Kennedy Knights of Columbus. We're having an Italian dinner. We're flying the chef in from Italy,
Ooh.
and
His name's Joe.
it's a fundraiser for us at the Knights of Columbus. I'm using that as
What time was that again?
from 3 to 7. John F. Kennedy Knights of Columbus on 33320 Kelly Road. By the way, there's only one-way entrance right now. That's all I got.
Emma, welcome.
Thank you.
Yes?
Do you have anything?
I don't.
Ms. Menendez.
I'm, okay, thank you.
We're going to leave you to last, Mr. Burley. How about Patrick? Do you, Mr. Green, anything?
Nothing for me.
Welcome.
Thank you.
It was a tough call on the business you're involved with. Mr. Burley, anything to? you want-
Driveway expansion. Where are we at in that?
Well, we now have
Close to 4.
close to a
Almost.
full board. If you want to delve back into that,
We can dust off the old memo and bring it back.
I mean, just, okay.
And thank you all for everything, appreciate it. And whoever did the minutes, great job, too.
We had someone else.
Oh, okay, they did a great,
I'll
did a
pass
great
along.
job. And thank you for all your counsel, appreciate it.
Mr. Green, you get to make the motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Emma?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye? Are you in favor?
I am in favor.
Yeah, okay. Good. Shut the mics off.